in 10 years, when you're on a stage somewhere and you're inspiring a group of 20 somethings that have hit the workforce, and then something happens like this again, what are you going to tell them to lead them? Because you can only take people as far as you've been. So I'm always acting in alignment with what I know I want to serve the world with.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Curious Competitor podcast. Today, I am your host, current New Jersey Devils defenseman, Carrick. A little different style show today. We're going to call this series, due to the length of it, or I guess the brevity, the lack of length, we're going to call it Mini Sticks to tip our cap to shinny hockey played in hotel hallways everywhere. I think it's fitting, actually, doing this first mini-series podcast on the road here in Buffalo. First road podcast I've been able to sit down and do. And the focus for me is to re-look at and I guess relearn some of previous lessons. And I think sometimes hindsight is 20/20, and you have this relationship with podcast material that can kind of smack you in the face. And it's interesting, like the first guest we're going to review and bring up some of the highlights with is Karissa Kouchis. And we talk a lot about energy and being the best family man and this concept of an and mindset. This is all in the face of, my phone's on loud around the clock now because Lexi could call me at any moment that we're going into labor. So this whole concept that, we have to leave butt to the wayside and entertain and lifestyle, this concept that we can have it all if we're able to commit to it. That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's watch the clips. That's something I've really tried to evaluate in my own, career development, is looking at the way other professional hockey players, go about their job. And maybe they have a system that works for them, but this is what I know works for me. I want to be both the type of player that has energy in January to go to the rink and practice and compete and battle for a job, and also then find a way to have the energy to be a good husband at home. Like, I want to be the type of person that gives myself permission to be that energetic leader, that energy creator that you seem to be, that you always have been. But you've got the right blend of like both, and you do the work to feel enlightened, but you understand like you've got to take care of the laundry too. Yeah. Like it's a blend of both. For Gary Vee, it's like he's got his head in the clouds, but his feet in the dirt kind of thing, right? It's that blend of dreaming and doing that each fuels the other.
Ooh, that fires me up. It's the and mentality. There's the real pandemic in this world, the real virus in this world is the but people. I want to do this, but this. I want to do this, but this. I want to be a great husband, but I'm a pro hockey player, so I'm always on the road. I want to be a great businesswoman, but I'm only 26. It's like when you're stuck in but, when you're addicted to but, game over. If you just have the courage to change that to an and from time to time, you'll get more used to it, and it'll become easy for you to see that you can have it all. And that is really, truly my belief. You can have it all. You can have all of it. You can have the business and the great relationship and the great body and be great at finances. You can grow up with really troubling circumstances and be super successful and contribute to this world and give back. And
so I want to pause right there. I paused the clip. I don't know. We're a minute 56 into it. Karissa is discussing this concept of and. This is particularly something I'm thinking about right now because I'm having some personal, or I guess professional, career adversity, which, we don't necessarily need to get into, but there's that magic word again, the but. But I talked about a goal, in my own personal life. It was something I journaled quite a bit about, where regardless of circumstance, I wanted to be this season the highest level of professional I could be. I wanted to control the controllables the best I could, which is something that, in the past, I can't say I've always done. And it's interesting. Another podcast that comes to mind is the Justin Hull podcast, where we talk about his season, where I think he'd played, 10 or 12 games total in the season, and just discussing what were you able to focus on? So in my own personal life, really taking, for example, my health, extremely seriously. I think there's this mode you get in where you're playing night in, night out, and you're just focused on that. And that's a beautiful flow state. But also there's an advantage to not being in the fire every night, not getting hit from behind and dealing with some of the things of being out of the lineup. And so, hone in on those positives, be diligent in my preparation. I can be both a person who desperately wants things to be different, lineup wise and professionally, and still prepare as if I was having, the dream start that I'd worked so long and hard for, during, COVID quarantine or whatever.
You can do it all. And that's a belief that I believe I learned at a really young age. And again, I don't know if that was my parents or just an internal knowing, but I do know that I had the courage to trust and listen to what I had in me, what I was being. It was almost like I've been channeling these things. And if you listen to them, you know what your body wants, but you have to be willing to receive that message. So a little one-liner that I say to myself all the time that might be helpful for listeners is, you are creating the story you will one day tell. Karissa, you're creating the story you will one day tell.
So I want to pause there and highlight this legacy mindset that Karissa talks about. And it's Tony Robbins is kind of famous for it. There's a podcast I talked about it with Josh Paul's, the Tim Ferriss, Jim Loehr podcast, this legacy minded thinking, this thinking that, what if our story was public? What if our self-talk, was on the Jumbotron at the arena that we were playing on? And that is, how I'm choosing in my life to currently handle, the different adversities that are going on. And I really do feel more than ever a heavier desire to be a role model as I'm a dad to be. And I really do feel that, these lessons I'm going to try to instill in Lexi and I's child, this concept of being a good person, doing your best no matter what. I want to first be an example for these things. And this is something I've actually journaled about quite a bit, is I really feel my purpose here on earth is to do my absolute best in every single circumstance possible. That's quite an ideal. That's quite a high measure to hold myself to, but I was chewing on it quite a bit. Actually, again, off this Jim Loehr, Tim Ferriss podcast. It's an outstanding podcast. Kyle Palmieri had sent it to me. Originally, I've listened to it twice. It's the only podcast I've ever listened to twice. I talked to Kyle about it. He's listened to it twice. So clearly it's something that struck a chord with both of us. And I really feel that, there's this question, Dr. Loehr draws out of his athletes is, who are you? Who do you want to be remembered as? And he tells a story of a speed skater in particular that isn't having, the storied career that he'd wanted. He was a hugely hyped speed skater. He'd had some, personal family trauma and frankly, there was a death in the family and it was really shaking him. And we grow up watching these movies with these storybook endings, and whether they occur or not, I think some of the dramatics in that whole experience can sometimes get in our own way. And I know with me in my own career, I feel like I'm one of the good guys. I feel like I'm someone that's supposed to have, all this success earlier in my career that I was on, projected to have. And frankly, the rest of the league and a particular coach or a particular GM who has a vision, they don't necessarily care a whole lot about your story. They just care about where you fit in their depth chart. And I'm okay with that. But it's really my own effort and my own attitude that I have to go to sleep with each night and know, am I giving my best, or am I letting the sourness of a particular situation affect how I want to do my job long term?
Pandemic hits in 10 years when you're on a stage somewhere and you're inspiring a group of 20 somethings that have hit the workforce, and then something happens like this again. What are you going to tell them to lead them? Because you can only take people as far as you've been. So I'm always acting in alignment with what I know I want to serve the world with. And the second thing I would say about this is you and I have both shared that. And it's really, there's maybe two things. One is blaring authenticity, having the courage to just be who you are, because people are going to be weird about it at first. They're going to question you because it might not be fitting the mold that you've been put in. And that's okay. You're going to find other people that share that with you. And you're going to become more free to be who you are with every single decision you make that's more true to yourself. And the second is standards. If you do not have a baseline standard for what you'll accept in your life, then you're just going to become a big jumbled reflection of all of the people in your life and all of the things they care about. And then you're like, wait, who am I? You really have to decide what's my standard and then just live by it.
Karissa brings the absolute gas there, just straight steam in terms of leadership advice. And this is something that, as my career's gone on and my life's gone on, I was waiting around for someone to knight me and allow me the permission to be a leader, in the locker room, in my community. And I recognize that true leaders just start. There is no sort of initiation into leadership. If you want to begin to be a good leader, you have to start acting in the way that a leader should. And I think that is something, Karissa embodies. She, in her career path as different as it is, she didn't really look around for permission. She just started to, really take off on the direction in life she wanted to go, and the roadmap sort of appeared. And I think that brings us into another key word that stands out from that clip with Karissa, is this concept of standards. We need to have standards in our life. We need to be clear about how we want them to look. Who can help us uphold our standards? What are our standards? Where are the places in which our standards sort of flow through us and it's not crazy challenging, right? How can we create this personal culture for ourselves where all of our decisions are in our own best self-interest? They're not self-sabotaging in nature. This is something that I'm trying to practice right now, and it's so cool to reflect upon, because I was writing some notes here before Colin and I sat down, and this concept of standards was actually something I wanted to save for a stream of consciousness, sort of podcast. But there's a question that we all get in our lives often, which is, how are you doing? And the issues of our life don't necessarily change at a rapid pace, right? Like at least in my life, I'm married. So if I'm having, relationship issues, it's usually with, sort of the same people. My friends don't change a whole ton. I'm on the same team. Career-wise, I'm having the same challenges, kind of year in, year out. And the goal, of course, is to break any momentum and to have the breakout year, to have the hot streak in your relationship where you just seem on the same page. Your partner's jokes are funnier. Before they even ask you to unload the dishwasher, it's already done. This concept of standards, we need to have them, and then we need to have times in which we can reflect upon them. And this is why I brought up the concept that we have these similar issues that sometimes end up patterns in our life. So for example, last season, I had a decently, it was major enough for me as a surgery. People would ask me in the road to recovery, how you feeling? How you managing, the expectations, the weighing of not being able to play? How bad did it hurt? All of those answers were more tolerable than the first time. So my standard in terms of how Connor Carrick as a hockey player and how Connor Carrick as a person rejuvenates and reboots post-injury was better the second time around. As an athlete, you're going to have times in your career where, you're in the coach's good graces, you're in the coach's doghouse. How do you handle each of those? How short can you make the low periods in your life, or how can you make them less dull so they're not as drastic or dramatic in nature? And how can you make the highs hotter? How can you not get as caught up in the success so you can maintain the sustainability of it? And so these are things I'm all chewing on. And then even in, to allude to the Justin Hall podcast a little bit, what are some things that in my personal life I can engage with right now? What are some controllables? In and out of the lineup, I mentioned health already. I'm using a blood glucose monitor. It's something that, why not? Grab some information about, how particular foods affect my body. I don't believe, all of a sudden I'm going to score 50 because I know what, my optimal blood sugar range is, but it's something I have available to me right now that can make me, if it's a 0.5% better, I'll take it. And then it really begs the question of, why do we care to raise our standards? Like, if we have this standard, it's something we wake up and ascribe to every day. For me, the reason why is because we are lifelong learners. I believe that is really what my greatest passion in life is. And I choose to view, no matter what is going on in my career, that my life is happening for me and for the eventual growth and the eventual person I will be. And I do not want, to be static, to stagnate in my personal or professional growth. And so, I think that is a great place to wrap up. What is our standard, as Karissa puts it, and why we care to have them, and how we can reflect on improving them day in, day out. So in closing, thank you all for joining me this week on Mini Sticks, a short style version underneath the Curious Competitor umbrella. Yeah, I just launched an umbrella as a podcaster. And I guess my thought process around this is self-development and self-growth doesn't necessarily, it requires sets and reps, but sometimes those sets and reps look different, right? Sometimes me personally, I have an hour to sit down. I'll lean on my friend Ryan Holiday for this one. Sometimes I have an hour to sit down and read Ego is the Enemy, let's say. But I've also found his use of the Daily Stoic, and this might be, how this podcast is styled a little bit, which is sort of a one-page Stoicism reflection. I found those equally as centering and more available. So let us know what you think about this short style podcast. I really enjoyed doing it. Thank you to Chris. I blatantly realized I got to have her on the podcast again. She was one of our fans' favorites. So from wherever you are in the world this week, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to doing it again next week.